right, Frontal Blessings. We are back with another video. Before we begin, a couple quick announcements. All right, so we are 2 days away, your last couple of days to sign up for the 6th annual Journey of the Black Adept Conference. We will have some good guest speakers. We'll have Brother Warlock Asylum doing a presentation for us this year. We have Sister Kiona. We got Brother Rabbiina doing a presentation this year. I'll be doing something. We got a cemetery working. So we got some good stuff lined up. That conference will kick off in a couple of days. Countdown. We are just a couple of days away. This conference this year, as I said, a little bit different. We've added more ritual work, more group, spiritual work, to more focus on our spiritual growth, especially as we see these changing times that we're living in, which is a very polite word. So it's about strengthening our spiritual power, wrapping up this cycle, season, or year, and getting ready for the next year. So looking forward to it. We've got a great 3 days of events planned. So looking forward to seeing everybody that's coming in person. Also, you can attend virtually the 6th annual Journey of the Black Adept Conference. You can shoot me an email. Also, for those who see this video today, you will all receive your digital itineraries for the conference by no later than tomorrow morning. Possibly later this evening, tonight. You might even have already received it by the time you viewed this video. But we are finalizing the order and putting that all together today as the recording of this video, October 17th. All right, so if you want to attend virtually or in person, Hollywood, Florida, Cultural Expressions. Weather's is banging right now. Weather's perfect right now. We got high 60s, very low 70s, cool, breezy, sunny. So the weather changed at the right time. Praise God. No, stop. But no, I love this type of weather. It's very invigorating, revitalizing, and all that good stuff. So it's looking good, feeling good, and looking forward to kicking off this conference and getting together and doing some spiritual and ritual work with the family this week. Shoot me an email, khnum19@gmail.com, and I will send you that information on how to sign up or register. Got a couple days left. Countdown. All right, if you're interested in a spiritual reading or a consultation, I offer various different readings: Klopathic demonic readings, Egyptian oracle readings, Santa Muerte readings, shadow work readings, deity readings. Again, this week, if you book a reading, I won't be able to get to you until next week. Believe it or not, this week is crazy. Little guy's birthday is tomorrow. I got my other son's birthday next week. I got the conference this month. It's traveling with hockey and all this other stuff going on. So a lot going on. This is my busiest month of the year, October, due to birthdays and all types of shit. Apparently in the month of October I was doing a lot of fucking. But anyway, it was a little joke. All right. Also, if you are interested in signing up for classes I offer, the way to get in on the classes is to go to the official Primordial Chaos Patreon page, patreon.com/Baniti, Baniti. Tier 3, that's the tier you want to join. That's going to give you access to the 3 private classes that I do every month on Patreon. And it gives you access to the group ritual that we do together at the end of the month. This month's group ritual at the end of the month, the last weekend in October, it's the Golden Lady of Death, the gold aspect of the Lady of Death ritual we will be performing, doing, executing, whatever you want to refer to it as. And the ritual is centered around overall good health, mentally, physically, and financial success and prosperity. We're going to be focusing on these things in this ritual, which are very important attributes, important things you need to obtain. This is part of your path to self-mastery, being in good health, physically and mentally. And again, having that financial prosperity that you so deserve. We're not supposed to struggle. We're not supposed to be poor on this path, okay? We're supposed to be successful on all levels. And That's why I have asked many times before, is your magic working, right? Well, we're going to get our magic fueled and working. All right, so that's the ritual for the end of the month. Also, keep in mind, all this content is being uploaded also to the Primordial Chaos podcast, which can be found on Spotify and all major podcast platforms. The direct link to the podcast, also for the social media pages, Primordial Chaos 9 on Instagram, Primordial Chaos 2 words on Facebook. The links to the social media pages, the links to the Primordial Chaos podcast, my contact email address, and also the direct link for the Primordial Chaos Patreon page. All of those can be found in the description box of this video you're watching right now. All right, so I want to talk about Aset, aka also known as Isis, which is the Greek name for the goddess. I want to dispel, as I like to throw deity videos in between, do these tutorials breaking down deities. When we look at Aset more so from the practitioner path of the occult or the left-hand path, it's not the same Aset or Isis that is described in what we call mainstream Kemetic spirituality. Okay? As I've said many times before, Aset is always portrayed, Isis, aka Isis, is always portrayed as this nurturing mother goddess, always this kind of, motherly, nurturing, divine, feminine presence. And that's true, 100%. I'm not saying it's not. That's 100% true. But what they do with Aset or Isis and a lot of the other Egyptian deities, they don't talk about their more sorcerous, magical, or darker aspect. Okay? Aset isn't that, just that innocent, motherly, nurturing figure that most are always presenting her as. Now, when we look at her qualities, and again, as I said, you got to learn how to ritualize the mythologies. So when you're reading the text and you're reading the stories of Aset, Isis, there's a lot of ritual power you can create, connect with, and use for your personal growth when it comes to the deity, Aset or Isis. Now, we were talking, what inspired me to do this video this morning, in Ancient Egyptian Vampiric class number 8 last night, we were talking about the book of Nun, the chaotic waters of Nun, the divine, demonic, feminine mother, Aset, Isis, being one of the central figures in representing that divine feminine principle. When we talk about the masculine and feminine principle, both are needed for the black adept or the magician or the sorcerer to have both of those attributes in harmony within themselves on the levels that they need it in order for them to master themselves and awaken the personal daemon within. Now, when dealing with this representation of Aset or Isis, as I was talking about last night, is very important, very critical. The reason why it's very important and very critical is understanding the difference of the divine, demonic, feminine principle and masculine principle, which, when we talk about principle, we're not talking about just not gender, as physically, masculine and feminine. It's not the same thing. As I said many times before, when you start working this path, when you start to connect with that feminine energy on the spiritual planes, for lack of a better word, it's very more intense, aggressive, warrior-like in nature. Sekhmet is another example of that, right? We see this with Kali, right? We see this with a lot with Lilith, obviously. And to get you a better understanding of that, the divine feminine principle and energy is so unique on a multitude of levels, because you tap into their as a man. I can only speak as a man, but as a man, there's that sexual energy and attraction that you can connect with and tap into, that awakens your sexual power that can be used, ritualistically for spiritual growth. There's that warrior-like nature that can be used in dealing with issues, blockages, clearing obstructions on your spiritual path, right? And there's also that nurturing motherly aspect. There's also that high levels of knowledge and wisdom. it's in my opinion, when you tap into both, you're going to find that the feminine principles tend to be very diverse and cover a wide range when it comes to your spiritual path. Okay? So Aset, when we talk about Egyptian Heka or working ancient Egyptian vampiric magic, right, she is very critical and key because she is the central figurehead, almost like Lilith on the clip pot, that is the facilitator of that spiritual energy that connects you to the hidden gnosis of this path. Now, we were also talking about last night, and again, I'm not going to go into all that here because that's really the Patreon classes. We were talking about the 7 pillars of ancient Kemetic vampirism, right? And we were talking about how, again, Aset being a facilitator through that divine feminine principle connects the understanding of those pillars, okay? So, let's look at a little bit quickly of the nature of Aset, or Isis, to show that she indeed was a sorceress, right? And one of the most intelligent, crafty, and was a very good sorceress. And I want to share with you the story. Some of you may be familiar reading in the Egyptian text, and some of you may not. We all might be familiar with the story of how Aset obtained what they call the magic word of Ra, which is his sacred name, his magical name, that unlocks the spiritual mysteries of magic, sorcery, witchcraft, whatever you want to call it. Okay? So, we see when we read this story, which nobody really talks about from a magical or an occult perspective, she wanted that power that Ra had. So she devised a plan by getting some of his bodily fluids, because she needed something that was genetically connected to him so she can carry out a ritualistic spell to obtain the sacred name of Ra. Okay? Now, in this story, the spell was designed that if Ra lied to her, she would know immediately. So he couldn't lie, because if he lied, it would be made known. And she would know at that moment when the correct name was given to her. Now, some people look at this story, as being negative, right? That's not how you should look at this story. You should look at this story because just as the male, or the patriarchal male had the right to be a god or a goddess and be centered in their power and had a right to know the secrets and the mysteries of ancient Egypt. Well, Aset fell as a female. She had that right too. Now, if you bring that up into the now, it's the same thing, right? Do or do not females have the right to obtain the same amount or greater power if they put the work in than the male does? And the answer is absolutely yes. Okay, remember, Egypt was not a system that suppressed the female like a lot of these other cultures and religions that come later, like Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, where the female is a second-class citizen and plays fiddle to the male and is this subservient, obeying, female. Like I said, most dudes are intimidated by a strong woman. Most dudes are intimidated by a woman who is intelligent, speaks her own mind, has her own thoughts, doesn't put up with any bullshit, right? It's threatening to them because any man that is threatened by that is very insecure. Any man that doesn't want that is a damn fool, okay? But most men want a docile woman that they can control and tell what to do, okay? Or a woman that obeys, okay? That's because a man that doesn't want a woman on his level or even greater is insecure and feels threatened by it. And this is why when you look at Aset, she's a representation of that strong woman, that woman that takes charge. As they use the saying today, went for hers, right? I'm going for it. She didn't wait around for it to be given to her, to be handed to her. She just went out there and did just like anybody else would do on this path. She went and obtained that power. And she devised a plan that when you read the story, it might sound deceptive, but read the story in its entirety. I don't want time to go through the entire thing. I'm just going to give you a quick summarization. But read the story in entirety. As a female, that story should be perceived that you need to be a strong female on this path. That you need to represent yourself in the fullest as a divine goddess. As an individual who has and is confident in her spiritual power and her sexuality, right? Because the power of the woman's sacred sexuality, that's a whole nother video, right? We'll get into that. We'll get into all that another time. But Aset represents that power and that connection, okay? Every man should want to be with an intelligent, strong, mentally powerful woman. It's what you should want. I know I don't want no docile ass chick that can't speak for herself. I ain't with all that girly girl, bimbo shit. You want a woman who represents a lot of the attributes that a lot of these female goddesses represent on this path, but maintaining their beauty and their sexuality. This is all Aset and Isis when you really tap into her in her dark sorceress aspect and through vampire Egyptian magic. It's not the same Aset that they're presenting to you on the surface as just this loving mother nature, the mother goddess, and all that shit, right? And again, as I said in the beginning, not that stuff isn't there. I'm not saying it's not, but it's not the only thing or the only attributes of the goddess Aset, right? So she gets some bodily fluids, casts this spell on Ra, and then asks him, what's the magical word of power? He lies to her at first. And the more he lies to her, the more he becomes under her control of her power. Well, long story short, you can read the whole story. He eventually gives her the magic word, right? And the magic word, which you'll understand later in Egyptian mysteries, what is the magical word or the magical name? It's not a physical name. So if you're thinking it's a name that you pronounce that has a title, it's actually a frequency and a tone. And you'll learn through your spiritual practice, you have tones and vibrations that unlock and open you up to the spiritual realm on a multitude of levels. It's your tone that activates and connects you, quote unquote, to what we call the spiritual world. And it gives you access to a lot of magical and spiritual power once you uncover, or that is unveiled in your spiritual practice. She obtains this magical word of power, and then we know the rest is history. We see when we read even the story of how she was able to reproduce on her own and give birth to Heru or Horus by using the phallus after her husband Osiris' body parts were chopped into 14 pieces. We see in the story, she searches the entire Nile and she finds his phallus. And she's able to reproduce and give birth by just using that phallus. This is why when you look and you see minarets and domes on churches and masjids, right? The minarets represent the penis, the domes represent the breast. It's this concept of the divine masculine and feminine principles, right? The Immaculate Conception story of the Virgin Mary comes from this Aset story of Horus and Heru, the divine virgin birth, as they say in Catholicism / Christianity. But all of that is derived when you're looking at who they're calling this Virgin Mary, the Immaculate Conception, and how this in Catholicism, which Catholicism, as I said before, is the root of all Christianity here in the West, and everything that sprouts after the fact is a cult or a branch of Catholicism, regardless if people like to hear that or not. But Catholicism is the only branch of Christianity that uplifts the female and puts them in a divine aspect in the form of who they're calling the Virgin Mary, which is no different than who they're referring to as Aset or Isis. It all comes from that story. Okay? And in that story of this quote-unquote immaculate conception or magical birth in ancient Egypt, it's just further testament to her divine goddesshood and who and what she is. And if you go back into ancient times, as I talked about, and you trace the mitochondrial DNA, and we were talking a little bit last night, there is something that a lot of indigenous ancient females going back to Africa and that whole region, they had something called a bobo gland, right? And again, in that article that I referred to in the Times Magazine issue, I believe it was 1993, when they talk about the mitochondrial Eve, they get into some of the aspects of how the woman has the ability to reproduce on her own. Because when a woman was linked or in tune, right, she had the ability to release serum from that gland, the same necessary semen that we provide as men, and she was able to give birth or reproduce on her own. Now, I'm not going to get into everything we talked about last night in reference to the scarab beetle, Kepri, remanifestation, reproduction. I mean, it goes deeper. Trust me when I tell you. I just don't have the time to get into all that here, and this is not the platform for it. Okay? So, all of this represents her divine feminine aspects, which, as regardless if you're a male or female practitioner, but more so if you're a female practitioner, you should draw from that ritualistically. It should be very empowering for you, because I can draw from it as a man on my own way, but obviously you can't draw from it the same way as a female can, right? But we'll have our method. We can do it. So I want to be clear in making sure we understand there's not just that one side of Aset or Isis that they show to us, right? If you really study the mysteries of Aset or Isis, you will clearly see how powerful a goddess really is, and how you have the ability to connect with her on a spiritual and magical level. Okay? Now, I'll talk in future videos her connection with Hathor. I'll get later down the road some of the magical workings in Heka that are connected to her spiritual path, including sex magic rituals, which was very big. The power of the female and her sexual energy was used as a very powerful tool in ancient Egypt. Now, we've heard how this sacred sexuality, as I said, and I'll leave you with this. It was known, you had a brotherhood back then and a sisterhood that they referred to. One was the canine order that connected to Anubis, the black Egyptian jackal dog of the dead. The other was the feline order. So you see, one was the cat, the female. And this is why in ancient Egypt you see a lot of female deities like Sekhmet, Bastet, in different forms depicted with the mask of a cat. But you had the sacred canine and feline order. The sacred feline order was connected to the mysteries of Aset or Isis through the sacred sexual powers of the female goddess, the spiritual power, and there was rites that were enacted in the temple or the sacred temples of ancient Egypt ritualistically that were carried out in dealing with a lot of the men or the males. Okay? They had to draw upon that sacred power of the female goddess in order for them quote unquote, to go through different degrees or levels, or to be fully initiated, I should say, for lack of a better word, in these Egyptian mysteries. Anyway, there's a lot more I could talk about Aset or Isis, but I am out of time. I am at my destination. Again, keep in mind these are quick tutorials, but believe me, if I went into the nooks and crannies of some of the stuff that I was talking about, and it does, I just would be here for hours, and that's not what these videos are for. All right? So this is a way you need to search deeper in understanding the goddess Aset. All right, if you need to reach out to me, khnum19@gmail.com. If you want to book a spiritual reading, if you want to sign up for the 6th annual Journey of the Black Adept Conference, you only got a couple more days. We're just 2 days out. All right. If you need any information on anything, email address is the email address, the direct link to the podcast, also the direct link to the social media pages, and also the direct link to the Primordial Chaos Patreon page to sign up for classes that I do offer every month. All of that is in the description box of this video you're watching right now, all right? Other than that, that's my time. I might try to get one more video up because after Wednesday, it'll be focused on the conference. I won't have time to do videos later in the week. Hopefully this video helped. Further blessings, and we'll talk soon.